Christina Snow was a normal high school student who was on honor roll and never got into any trouble until she fell in love with the monster. She lived in Nevada with her mother and stepfather and was the middle child of two siblings, an older sister named Lee and a younger brother named Jake. She had not seen her father in 8 years because her mother had custody of her. And during the summer, she decided to go see him, so she took a plane to Albuquerque, New Mexico to meet her father. And at first, things were kind of awkward. They didn't really have much conversation. He was kind of weird, and she found out that he did a lot of drugs. And she met a boy named Adam who lived nearby her father, and he asked her if she ever did any drugs before, and she said she had smoked marijuana 1 or 2 times, but she decided to say yes when he asked her to do a line of meth and snort it because she was like, oh, this boy is really cute. I want to impress him, show him that I can do this, and maybe he'll start to like me. An excerpt in the book is titled Introduction, and it says, so you want to know all about me, who I am, what chance meeting brush and canvas painted the face you see, what made me despise the girl in the mirror enough to transform her, turn her into a stranger, only not. So you want to hear the whole story? Why, I swerved off the high road, hard left to nowhere, recklessly indifferent to those coughing in my dust. Picked up speed, no limits, no top end, just a high velocity rush to madness. And if you see the book, they're worded like this, and if you read this down, it says, I am the face in the mirror, only not. I swerved recklessly, picked up speed to madness. I think these poems are really interesting, and after a while, when she started to continue to do meth, she started to crash when you come down from doing meth. And here's another poem saying, you fly until you crash, 2 days, 2 nights, no sleep, no food, come down off of the monster, you crash real hard. The monster is also called Crank, which is the title of the book, and she ended up snorting it, smoking it, injecting it, and it's really upsetting. And when she comes back from her father's, after 3 weeks, her mother and her stepfather and even her siblings notice she is a completely different person. She does not act like herself. She is very irritated when they're trying to talk to her. She cusses obscenities at her mother and gets very angry with her. Another part in the book is, but that day, there was still enough Christina to feel humiliation, still a matter of old-fashioned morals somewhere inside, still a healthy dose of survival instinct buried beneath a child fractured by hormones, smashed by the monster's fist and pressed into memory by two-faced bravado. This is when Christina does meth and she's on those drugs. She wants her friends and everyone to call her Bree. It's some sort of alter ego, and throughout the book she calls herself Bree, and she's torn between Bree and Christina, who she really is, who she wants to be. She wants to be Christina, but she likes that Bree is a more open person and more straightforward. She talks to boys even though Christina never would. She does things that Christina never would. She just wants to make her mother proud. Throughout the book, she loses her old friends, Sarah and Trent, who used to be her best childhood friends, and she does anything to find meth. She gets with this girl that's on the cheerleading squad who she knows does it, and she starts hanging out with kids on the avenue, which is where the high schoolers who aren't supposed to smoke go to smoke, and she started hanging out with them. She started draining her bank account, and it was just really sad to read about because you feel sympathetic towards them. And throughout the book, she met the guy named Adam at her dad's house. She still wrote him letters. That was her very first love. She met a boy named Chase and Brendan, and it ended up that she was falling in love with Chase, but she was trying to get crank meth from Brendan, and it ended up that Brendan raped her and took her virginity. It was really upsetting to read about, but stuff like that does happen. And a few weeks later, she found out she was pregnant. And here's a poem from when she found out. It says, "Clear blue easy, was clearly blue, but there was nothing easy about finding out I was pregnant. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know who to turn to. You've probably heard that story before. But until you're in those shoes, wearing them seems so straightforward. Keep your baby, give it away, abort your baby, give it life. If you think you have a clear idea, try throwing drugs into that picture. Not quite so cocky now, are you? So tell me, how would you choose?" And I think that's hard for a lot of people. And she also does multiple other drugs. She mixes her meth with nicotine and beer and other alcohol, and she also did ecstasy. And this poem's about ecstasy and how the author describes it. And it says, "Ecstasy is hard to describe. It's like falling softly into a pool of crystal mountain water, floating on your back, circular beneath vibrant sky, deciphering codes in the clouds spinning dizzy fast. It isn't at all like going clear out of your mind like a lunatic mad, throwing yourself in front of a runaway train insane, hallucinating black widows and black helicopters behind you, crazy. It's a lot more like jumping into your own brain, ferreting what's inside, accepting past failures, freeing self-destructive demons, forgiving yourself and those you love, even those you despise." I think the book describes doing drugs very well, and although it's intriguing, I would never want to do it because it just gets you in a downward spiral. This book about Christina does go in a downward spiral, and although she's trying to pick herself back up, her brain and her mind and her body are so addicted to the meth that she is trying to pick it back up, but needs the monster. She talks about needing the monster and how it just consumes her whole life. This page says, "Did it show?" I mean, I'd thought about the monster, dreamed about the monster, lusted for the monster, regretted knowing the monster, but I hadn't touched the monster in over a month, hadn't even seen it, thought I might be over it, but was it still alive in me? Could it still have such a solid hold on me? And throughout the book, it did have a hold on her. Even though she didn't touch the meth for a month after she came back from her dad's house over the summer, it still had a hold on her, and she just did it again and again and again. And eventually she found out she was pregnant. She tried to quit. She said she tried really hard, but she just couldn't break the habit. And although luckily her baby turned out to be okay, it's still such a heart-wrenching story. And although it says it's fiction, but it's a very true story that happens, and a lot of people go through something similar like this. Maybe not exactly the same, but it's a great story to read. And the struggles of the monster. The monster could be heroin for some people. It could be cocaine for other people. And in Christina's case, it's meth. And there's also there's a sequel and a trilogy that goes along with this book. The title is called Crank, and the author is Hopkins.